All right, welcome to this small session about environmental product declarations, also known as the EPDs. My name is Jaakko Paloheimo. I am the Sustainability Manager at UPM Plywood. But before we dive deeper into these documents as such, a little bit of background information why we are talking about these EPDs. Approximately 30 to 40% all of the carbon-related emissions are currently created through the construction sector. And if we think about the fact that by the end of this century, there will be approximately 10 to 11 billion of us inhabiting this planet. If we think about the fact that all of these 10 to 11 billion people, they require homes, houses, infrastructure in their daily lives, hospitals, daycare centers, schools. We are facing a bit of a dilemma. At the same time, we need to heavily lower our emissions in the building sector, but also we need to build more and more and more. Now, why do we do this video about EPDs? The importance and relevance of EPDs is increasing because of our national carbon footprint limit values in each country, because of the increasing regulations in the EU, and because of national emission reduction targets. We will take a deeper look into these topics later on in the document. Now, what is an EPD? As mentioned, it is an environmental product declaration, and it shows the climate effect of a certain product manufactured by a certain company at a certain mill. So they are very product-specific documents. These documents can be used in comparison between other similar materials or similar products. And then again, if you are not in possess of these documents, you need to use so-called generic values. And these generic values are usually very conservative values and quite a lot higher than the values provided by the EPDs. As an example, generic value for uncoated spruce plywood is over 3 times bigger than the value we are providing in our uncoated spruce plywood EPD. Therefore, for structural designers, for structural engineers, for architects, even for investors, the relevance and importance of these documents increases because when one needs to calculate the carbon footprint for the total building, for the new building in the future, they need to find out the most suitable products with the lowest emissions. Therefore, comparing the generic values with the EPDs and each EPD with each other is relevant. EPDs are transparent, they are comparable as said, and that information is needed in that comparison. Once again, EPDs are voluntary, but if you take into account the generic value, for example, in our case, the triple amount of emissions created in that generic value versus our EPDs, the relevance becomes even higher. One might compare an EPD to nutrition label, except instead of calories, we are measuring the carbon emissions created in the manufacturing process. As said, these EPD values can be used for the building's climate declarations, but also when an investor or a contractor is aiming for example, BREEAM or LEED certificates for the buildings, these EPDs will provide you with points or credits in gaining a higher certificate level. EPDs are always credible and they are verified by the third-party organizations. A very short overview or a gaze into our UPM WISA plywood products. They can be used, e.g. in construction sector for walls, for floors, for roof structures, and mainly in the building sector we use the spruce plywood. In spruce plywood we have uncoated spruce, we have coated spruce, and we have treated spruce. For all these 3 categories, we have the environmental product declarations called EPDs. On top of the spruce plywood EPDs, we have the birch plywood, and there we have coated birch plywood and uncoated birch plywood. Now, the values that we are talking about in the EPDs, so-called, for example, in this case, we are talking about carbon emissions. It takes quite a long time to gain the lower values. It is not done within a day or 2. We've been working for years or decades in order to lower emissions, our emission level into the level where we are now. And for example, the latest results in the brand new spruce EPDs, you can see a massive difference in the previous EPDs because of 2 main things. We have added finally our BioBond technology, which shows the gluing technology development. In the BioBond technology, we have replaced over 50% of the fossil-based phenol in the glue with wood's own lignin. That takes our emission levels down quite a bit. Then again, our scope 2, so-called purchased energy and purchased electricity, is nowadays 0 kilos since the last year. This has a massive effect in our fossil-based emissions. You can see those results later on. Now let's take a glance into the EPD itself. On the first page, you will find the product name. In this case, we are talking about WISA Spruce Plywood Uncoated. Below that product name, you'll find the representative product. In this case, the representative product is WISA Spruce. In one EPD, one can have several different product names, but only one representative product. We'll get back to that later on with the treated EPD, and I will show you the case. On the first page, you also see the manufacturer, in our case, the UPM Plywood Oy. You will find the EPD system program, and most relevant probably in this one is the validity until this document is valid. We first published this version of the EPD in 2021. It was revised in 2024, in the end of last year. And from the revision date, it's valid for 5 years. So we still have close to 5 years left with this EPD. On the next pages, you will find general information about the EPD program at hand. You will find certain standards, product category rules called PCRs. I'm not going deep into those. You will find the organization who did the LCA analysis, the life cycle assessment. You will find the third-party verification partners, etc. On the second page, a little bit more detailed about the company of ours, a little bit more precisely. When I said previously that we're talking about specific product by a specific manufacturer at a specific mill, from this part of the document, you will also find which sites we are talking about, on which sites these products are manufactured. You will also find product-related certification information. In the next one, there's a little bit about the product itself. And here it's worthy to mention in the beginning the product name. It states there that this EPD only represents the products manufactured at a certain mill. In our case, when it comes to uncoated, and treated spruce plywood, we're talking about the Pellos mills. This is relevant when it comes to, for example, companies having their own brand names for certain plywood products. And if for that product, that distributor or a company has several different manufacturers, they are not allowed to use a certain EPD. EPD is always specific per the product and specific of the company that manufactures it. That is a relevant information in this page. Other than that, there's a little bit of background story about the product. Let's not go too deep there. Next page, we go to the life cycle assessment information, and there is few relevant bits and bolts that we like to underline. For example, in our EPDs, we always talk about the cubic meters. Some companies or some EPDs might be talking about the square meters, but we decided to take the very universal unit of 1 cubic meter used in the construction sector. It also states the density of our product is approximately 460 kilos per cubic meter, but you will see that also later in the product content. Reference service life, if the product is used correctly, it's 100 years. Not saying that it will always last for 100 years, but if you use it correctly, according to the rule books, it will last for 100 years. The next part, we start diving a little bit deeper into the modules of the LCA, and here is relevant to notice that the current value we use in calculation throughout the construction sector, when it comes to products, it's so-called product stage. This stage is something that we as product manufacturers can affect. We talk about raw material supply, transport, and manufacturing process. The raw material supply, for example, in our case, means harvesting the logs, whatever fuels the harvesters are, for example, using, our adhesives, how the adhesives and glues are made, the coatings, if we have coatings in certain products, but also the energy that we use in making these products. The transportation, the A2 phase there, means the transportation from the raw material source into our mills, in this case, Pellos mills. The manufacturing process means how efficiently we do the manufacturing process of plywood. After that, you will see the construction process stage, A4 and A5. Then we go further to the U stage, B stage as we know, and then the end of life stage, which is called the module C. These are something that we as product manufacturers cannot much affect. But most relevant part for the building sector when it comes to EPDs and climate declaration calculations for the new building is the first three parts, A1, A2, and A3. That is the value used in the calculations, also known as product stage. On the next page, you find a little bit closer look into these modules. We don't go too deep there, but it's worthy to notice that in our EPD, for example, in the text below, module A1 explains what is included in that module. The module A2 includes the transportation methods, as said, from the supply, from the source into the mill. And module A3 is the manufacturing process explained below in the figure. That shortly explains how our process looks like. It doesn't go into too much details, but the several parts in the process is explained by figures. On the next page, there is this information that we cannot affect too much, and hence we'll be using average values, for example, in the calculation of this product's life cycle. And I won't go too deep there, but you will find some average values and numbers, percentages that we'll be using in this EPD. It's worthy to mention that an EPD represents the life cycle of the product, even though we are putting emphasis in the beginning of making that product, from the raw materials to the manufacturing. Then the life starts in different applications for the plywood, but once again, we cannot affect that too much. Content information in our EPDs, we open it rather, let's say, transparently. Some companies might be showing just, for example, in the case of plywood, there might be wood without specific information about the wood species. There might be glue, and that's it. We decided to open it so that you will see that we use spruce raw material. We have some moisture in the plywood, some resins, some hardeners, fillers, and some other optional additives, adhesives, fillers, whatnot. We also opened up very shortly the average composition of the packaging. The total density, the average density that we use in the case of spruce is 460. Then we go finally into these tables. It can be, as mentioned, rather overwhelming, the amount of data and the values you find in these documents, but in the end of the day, they are rather simple, and at the moment, in this day, today when we are doing the calculations, we only need one or two numbers from this whole document. Once again, it's worthy to underline the fact that we are talking about, in this table, about the representative WISA uncoated spruce plywood. As mentioned, in one EPD, you can have several different products, several different names, but you need to mention the representative product. In this EPD, for example, representative product is uncoated spruce plywood. When you go to the left side of the table, you will see GWP indicators. GWP stands for global warming potential. Basically, that means the climate change. You have the total, you have the fossil, you have the biogenic, and you have the LULUC. Most common value used in modern day is the GWP fossil, which means how much fossil-based emissions we are releasing when manufacturing this product when we talk about the phase A1 to A3. Sounds complicated, but basically that's the main value one needs in the whole document. How much fossil emissions we are releasing when we are manufacturing the process, including the raw material sourcing and the transportation. When you think about the life cycle, you start going right in the table, you see A4, which is the transportation from the mill gate to the construction site. A5 is the construction process. B is the use phase, wherever the plywood in this case might end up. C is the dismantling and disposal of the building, and D would be the recycling or reuse. When I mentioned the A1, A3 is the most needed value, in our case it's 70, it means 70 kilos of CO2 equivalent per cubic meter. If we go in our previous EPD, that very same value was 142. It was already a rather good value, but in this EPD, we've managed to lower that with 50% down to 70 kilos of CO2 per cubic meter. So our scope 2 values are 0, the biobond is included, hence the number got down with 50%. If you check the other values or other indicators on the left side, you will find, for example, the GWP biogenic. That represents how much carbon is stored in the plywood. Then again, the LULUC value, the GWP LULUC means the land use, and the total value on the upper left corner of the indicator field, that is all those three pieces summed together. As mentioned, in the construction sector, the most used value is the GWP fossil A1 to A3. In this table, it's 70. Some cases you might be using the GWP total value, which is negative because of the fact that wood stores carbon in the product. If we go down the table, you see millions of numbers, you see numbers or values with E minus 0 something. That is just the fact because the number is so small that you cannot fit it in the table. E minus 0.7, for example, means that you are moving the dot to the left 7 steps. If there would be, for example, E plus 0.2, you would move the dot 2 steps to the right. So the number would get bigger. Basically, in these charts, these information and indicators, you won't need them at the very moment. It's relevant information, but not currently, not today. But everything is in the EPDs, that's compulsory data. When you start going down the chart, you will find more similar data with different indicators, ranging from the freshwaters to GWP, GHGs, the greenhouse gases, etc. Plenty of information in these fields. You go one down, you will start indicators like PERE and PERM. All of these are explained below those tables, what these indicators mean. You have some waste indicators. On the following pages, some output flow indicators and other impact category indicators. After the other impact category indicators, we come into an interesting part. Because so far we've been going through the values from the representative product, and now we are going into the other brand names that are included in this EPD. And for that, I will go to another EPD just to illustrate how this conversion factor, so to say, works with our treated WISA spruce plywood. This is our treated WISA spruce plywood document, similar as to the uncoated spruce document, but this is the treated. And why? Because in this product we have 4 different WISA spruce plywood products. You can see that the representative product is WISA spruce BT, which is our surface treated plywood against the biocides, etc. The WISA roof is similar, treated with a different brand name. WISA spruce WR is water repellent, and WISA spruce FR is the fire retardant. So in this case, once again, the representative product is WISA spruce BT. And I will show you what's the difference. When we scroll down the document, all the way to the similar tables we were going through with the uncoated, we are here. You can see on the top, representative WISA treated spruce plywood. And as mentioned in the beginning, and up here, it's about WISA spruce BT. In this case, our GWP fossil A1, A3 value is 80.1. Because of the treatment, it creates a little bit of extra emissions compared to that 70 with the uncoated spruce. Now, when we go down the table, we are still talking about WISA spruce BT here. You see the other impact category indicators. On the next page, there is a difference. You don't see the similar values anymore in the table. But here you see that we are talking about conversion factors from the representative product to WISA spruce WR. In the previous EPDs, there was no need to do it like this, but with the modern day rules in the EPD program, we need to show the conversion factor to different products versus that representative product. In the case of WISA spruce WR, the needed value, the GWP fossil A1, A3 value is mentioned here, 0.946, and that is the conversion factor for the spruce BT's value. So it's a simple math, multiply this conversion factor with the value given in this chart of 80.1. You will find below here conversion factors to WISA spruce FR, and once again, the most needed value is right here, GWP fossil A1, A3, where the conversion factor is 1.386. So in the case of spruce WR and spruce FR and roof, we are talking about conversion factors multiplied with the value from WISA spruce BT. In the end of the day, rather simple math, two numbers multiplied together. Once you go further in the documents, you will basically find either changes from the previous version, like in our uncoated spruce plywood, EPD. On top of these references, you will see the changes from the previous EPD. There you have the references, and that's pretty much the whole document. In this case, 16 pages long, but eventually rather easy to understand if you don't go through all the tables, all the different indicators, etc. But you put your emphasis in GWP fossil value, maybe GWP biogenic value, which gives you the stored carbon in the product, and perhaps the GWP total value depending on the country where you are. I hope this clarified the EPD documents even a little bit. They can be overwhelming, but the importance and relevance, as mentioned, is increasing as we speak. In one way or another, we need to tackle the emissions deriving from the construction sector. As mentioned in the very beginning, towards the end of the century, we are somewhat around 10 to 11 billion people, so we need to tackle these emissions in one way or another. EPD documents are a good tool in comparing the emission levels from different materials and different products. That's all for now. I hope you got a little bit out of this little video session, and in further questions, you can always approach me, Jaakko Paloheimo, or, for example, our environmental manager, Sanna Kontinen, who's been heavily behind creating these documents, and her information you will also find in the very beginning of these EPD documents of ours. Thank you for watching.